If you stand on a city street for long enough, you begin to notice something curious. Almost everyone is carrying something. Could be a paper bag folded neatly under an arm, coffee that could be warming cold hands, especially in winter. Some people have a bunch of flowers wrapped in brown bags. It could be a loaf of bread. There is a baker on the streets. It could be a parcel with tomorrow's delivery date, and that'll be printed on the side. Shopping bags pass quite quiet, and they go like a current through the city like a river. But we rarely think about this. It's now just simply part of the landscape now in our city of Melbourne. It's just ordinary, just like the traffic lights or the tram tracks that we walk across. But every so often, I do find myself wondering, what are we really looking for when we go shopping? What are you looking for when you go shopping? You may be able to answer. Because on the surface, the answer obviously seems very plain. Do we need groceries? Are we chasing a birthday present? An anniversary present? Do we need a new pair of shoes? Is it the wire replacement kettle? Just after our old one finally gave up after years. It can be simple things like this. Practical things. And yet, if this was the whole story, shopping would never become one of the defining rituals of modern life. There has always been something else happening beneath the surface. Cities, especially big ones like Melbourne, have always understood this. Long before shopping centres and online deliveries, people gathered where goods were exchanged. Markets became meeting places. Main streets, like Collins Street, became stages upon which ordinary life unfolded, especially the businessmen walking past after work. People came out to buy bread. They stayed to hear the news under the clocks. A child might remember the smell of the oranges. A grandfather might pause to talk to someone he hadn't seen in weeks. A shopkeeper might quietly notice that a regular customer was just looking a little bit tired on the day. But sadly, no history books record those moments. They just disappear almost as quickly as they just happened. And yet there may be among the most important moments the town has ever had. Because communities are not only built through great events, they're built through repetition. The same streets, the same alleys, the same faces. And of course, it's the same conversation that began with, "Hi, how have you been?" Well, good day, mate. 100 years ago, shopping unfolded slowly. There was time built into it. Time to walk, time to wait, time to notice. But today, time has become something we seem determined to remove from our experiences. We order before breakfast. The parcel arrives in the afternoon before dinner. Thank you, Amazon. It's remarkable how this has become a routine for us. Convenience has become almost invisible. And it's difficult to argue against any of this. Modern life is now in many ways easier than it was 100 years ago. But a family within a remote town can buy books that would have been impossible to find. A person with limited mobility can have groceries delivered to their front door now, but they couldn't do that in the old days. Parents juggling work and children can reclaim precious hours, those hours that might once have been spent walking from the shop to the shop. And these are genuine improvements. And yet, sometimes, when something becomes easier, something else slips away. Not dramatically, not all at once, just little by little. A familiar face behind the counter has gone. A conversation that wasn't necessary, but had happened, might have slipped away. The unexpected discovery of a book, because it happened to be sitting on a shelf. The decisions, if you decide to just wander without knowing what exactly you're looking for, perhaps we become very good at finding things. But not quite as good as being surprised. That's what old shopping streets seem to understand. They still invite you while you're wandering, not because wandering is efficient, but because wandering leaves room for the unexpected events. A window catches your eye. Music drifts in through the open doorway from buskers. You notice an old sign that's been hanging above the same shop for decades. You hear someone laughing. You see someone waiting patiently on a bench. Someone leaves carrying a small parcel tied with a ribbon. Nothing remarkable has happened. And yet, somehow, everything is remarkable. Maybe that's what draws us back to these old places. Not the shops themselves, but for the possibility that, for a few unhurried moments, we might feel less like consumers and more like a participant in a quiet theatre of our life. There is a moment just before the city fully wakes, when the city and the streets seem to belong to no one. When the shop lights are beginning to glow behind the polished glass, cafe workers dragging tables onto footpaths, delivery trucks reversing, slow, patient rhythm of another ordinary moving beginning exactly as it has 1,000 mornings before. But streets soon fill with people. Some arrive for purpose. Others with only a vague intention to wander. Most will leave something carrying. Now this time they could have that loaf of bread, or the bottled milk, or the birthday card, and they might have found their new shoes. And the flowers always are carefully wrapped. And of course, they've still got that coffee between their hands. And most of us still call that nothing remarkable. Shopping has become so completely woven into everyday life that it almost disappears. It sits quietly in the background, and it's just part of our routine, just as ordinary as brushing our teeth or waiting for that V-line train that's not coming. We rarely stop to ask our towns why we arrange the way they are, why certain streets feel alive, while others are slowly faded or quiet. Why do shop windows have curiosity ability to draw us in, even when we have no intention of buying anything at all? Perhaps it's because shopping has never really been about shopping. Well, not entirely. It has always been about something much harder to name. It's always about hope, about a routine, about a preparing for a tomorrow that never comes, about caring for people waiting at home, about imagining a life that has just a little different from the one we have today. Of course, every shopping bag tells a long story before it actually reaches our kitchen table. Of course, a century ago, these streets would have sounded differently. Not quieter exactly, but gentler. Horse hooves striking stone, but no cars. Bicycle bells, tram bells, children running errands with coins carefully wrapped inside a handkerchief. The familiar creak of timbered doors opening onto shops whose owners knew almost every customer by name. The butcher was not simply a place to buy meat. He knew who had welcomed a new baby. He knew whose husband had been injured at work. He knew who might just need that little extra credit until payday arrived. The baker noticed who preferred crustier loaves and who came every Thursday afternoon for a sponge cake, because that's the day the grandchildren were visiting. The chemist quietly grief before anything was spoken aloud. The chemist's warehouse doesn't do that now. Lives overlapped into these places. Commerce and community occupied the same small rooms. But sadly today, we think of shopping just as a transaction. But it was once, more often, a relationship. More certainly mattered. People worked hard for every shilling they earned. Waste, that was almost unthinkable. Clothing could be repaired. Furniture was handed from one generation to the next. Vegemite jars, and every glass jar was reused for another purpose. Brown paper was folded carefully because it might serve another purpose tomorrow. Every object carried responsibility. Buying something new was rarely casual. It was considered. It was discussed. And even sometimes we delayed it for months or even years. But there was anticipation built into most every purchase. No afterpay in those days. Perhaps anticipation was part of the value. There's a particular kind of happiness that comes when you're waiting for something. When you're saving your money inside a biscuit tin. You look out the window and you see the seasons change. And when you're finally walking into town, knowing that today, after months of patience, you could finally afford the thing you had to imagine so many times before. The journey must have felt different then. The parcel wasn't simply something you owned. It represented time, your effort, your hard-earned restraint, and hope was made visible. Today we live in an age where waiting, wanting, and often have only 1 hour to apart from each thing we buy. A thought appears, a Google search begins, a buy button is pressed, and somewhere in a warehouse we've never seen, machines begin moving things to the distribution. And then by this afternoon or tomorrow morning, a parcel is resting on the front doorstep and your Google doorbell records it. Efficiency is extraordinary. Convenience is undeniable. It has made life easier in countless ways. Parents with little spare time, older people unable to drive, families living hundreds of kilometres from major cities. For many people, modern shopping is not convenient, it's liberation. And history rarely moved backwards, nor should it. Yet progress is an interesting companion, whether it gives us something or it quietly asks us to leave something else behind, but not through malice and not because anyone chose to do it. Simply because there are so many hours in a day. When shopping became faster, wandering became rare. When deliveries became effortless, chance encounters almost don't happen. When algorithms learnt our preference, surprise became very difficult to find. I wonder sometimes whether the greatest luxury of the past was not abundance, but maybe it was just interruption. You know, to leave a house intending to buy butter and returning an hour later after spending 20 minutes talking to the old friend at the shop. To discover a book that's simply because it happened to be sitting in the shop window. To notice a new cafe because mystery has actually drifted through that door. And of course, you would lose track of time. Modern life, modernity, has become astonishingly good at helping us find exactly what we're looking for. There's an AI listening to us all the time. It is less certain now, but it still helps us discover what we really need. There is an old arcade in almost every city, and there's several in Melbourne. Now, sometimes they're beautifully restored, sometimes they're quietly fading, but Melbourne tries to keep them. The tiles beneath your feet carry millions of footsteps. And children are always running ahead of parents. Young couples are beginning lives together, even if they're sitting on a chair or talking on their phones to each other. Office workers buy sandwiches and lattes. Windows choosing symphony cards. Teenagers spending their first pay packet, probably on vapes. Visitors searching for souvenirs, and those souvenirs might contain the feeling of the place they've visited. The buildings remember none of their names, and yet they remember everything. Architecture has a peculiar way of ordinary lives. It collects us into one bunch. Walls, they observe conversation. Shop fronts witness generations passing beneath the same awnings. Staircases slowly wear smooth beneath shops, but some have become escalators. And people are wondering, will the escalators ever become part of history? Although we've still got a wooden escalator in Melbourne. History, after all, is mostly made from ordinary days. It's not a decoration. It's not a ceremony. It's not headlines. It's just mornings and afternoons like this one. Someone buying flowers because it's an anniversary. Someone has replaced that broken kettle. Someone who searched their birthday present says, I've got the best object I can. But of course, I was thinking about you. It is tempting to believe that civilization is built by governments and monuments, but perhaps it's built just as much by greengrocers and bookstores, by cafes where strangers are now regulars. I know the name of every one of my baristas in Melbourne, and they know my name as well still, but that takes work and time and patience. Market stalls where recipes are exchanged alongside vegetables. That's how we got our pumpkin soup recipe. Ooh, a bit of curry in our pumpkin soup. By tiny conversations so brief that neither person remembers them by the evening. Yet together, they create the quiet feeling that this place, this neighbourhood, this city, somehow belongs to all of us. Perhaps that is why we're losing an old shop can feel strangely personal, even if we've hardly ever visited. The family bakery closes down, and it's been open for 80 years. These are things you don't think about. Of course, they take patience. So today we live in an age where wanting and having only existed is only hours apart. And have you thought about that? These are the questions that time itself asks us. Now, a bookshop can lock its doors for the final time. Coles Bookshop did that. A hardware store becomes another empty window waiting for a lease because Bunnings has taken over. Superstores, as they call them. We tell ourselves that business come and go. We lost bets and bets this week. But that change is inevitable. But it is. But sometimes what disappears is not simply a shop. It's a piece of the town's memory. One less place where people knew one another without needing an appointment. One less place where children grow into adults or standing in the same morning queue. It's one less thread in the fabric of everyday life. The city rarely notices changes at all once. Every change happens slowly. One less storefront, one less familiar face, one goodbye at a time. And perhaps that's how every age quietly becomes history without realising it. Because no generation ever believes that ordinary things come without becoming an object of nostalgia. Supermarket recipes, loyalty cards, paper shopping bags, none of these feel important now. But then, neither did the handwritten groceries. So what do we speak about today with remarkable clarity? They tell us what people have cooked, what carefully they planned, how they celebrated, how carefully they planned. But small objects have become the loudest voices history leaves behind. A mug could appear every morning with a tea, and you can still get lamp-illuminated quiet conversations. You often find a cookbook in-house that's stained by years of family dinners. You could find a blanket wrapped around something during illness, and it could have a memory in it. These objects we purchased give enough time, and they always become memories of people we've never met. Because that's the truth, hidden in every shopping area. We never merely exchange money for things. We always have been gathering small pieces from life which is built. And it's always just one ordinary purchase, one ordinary day, and life is always an ordinary story at a time. Sometimes I wonder what an archaeologist would find 100 years, 200 years, 2,000 years like with the Romans. What would they ask us to explain? They wouldn't be looking at our politics. They wouldn't find our technology. But they'd find the things we brought, the old bottles. What story would they tell after an opening of an ordinary kitchen cupboard? Would they understand that we were there, 7 different coffee mugs? Each one had become someone's favourite cup. Would they know why a faded shopping list had been tucked into a cookbook and why it was there? Would they smile at the drawer full of batteries, takeaway menus that no longer belong to restaurants that don't exist, birthday candles saved for the next time, or the tea towel that you brought on a holiday that became too precious to use? Because they would realise that every generation eventually discovers that homes are not museums. They're a living collection of ordinary decisions. Every object carries the memory of a particular reason, whether it was a rainy Saturday, a hurried stop after work, a holiday by the sea, a birthday, a farewell, an unexpected celebration. These objects stay. The moment slowly fades until one day the object becomes the only doorway back. I think that is why old things move us too deeply. They move us ever so deeply, not because they are valuable, but because they have survived. A worn wooden spoon, a chipped enamel bowl, the old department store box hidden in the back of a wardrobe. They are our quiet witness to life. And as I watch people moving through those streets, I find myself paying less attention to what they're carrying and more attention to how they carry it. One person hurries through the rain protecting a bouquet beneath a coat. Parents carrying 2 heavy grocery bags, small children proudly carrying the lightest one. Moments like these pass unnoticed. Traffic continues. Light changes. Different trams arrive. And a city never pauses. And yet, this is where life has happened. So, perhaps you found me here. Perhaps you see me walking home. Perhaps you saw me carrying a bag. Perhaps I was thinking about dinner. Perhaps I was planning a birthday. But perhaps I was just buying bread. Living a life that, in the moment, seemed beautiful, wonderfully ordinary. Because in the end, a few of us remember what cost. A few of us remember who was with us. But we remember the weather, we remember the cafe, and we remember carrying that parcel home. We remember it sitting in the house, and we remembered life gathering around it, long after objects itself has disappeared. So perhaps next time you're out shopping, or wandering through a shopping street, just stop and think, why are you there?